child, and she knew very well that if a cathedral was being consecrated, it would mean standing on the hard stone floor for several hours and falling to her knees repeatedly in prayer. She was well versed in the many rules of church life, surely far better than most of the noblemen and their daughters surrounding her just now, but she had not acquired this knowledge through faith or free will. When she was 16 years old, her father, with good reason, took it into his head that she was paying too much attention to a kinsman from Norway, of far too low birth, which might have led to something that belonged only within the sacrament of marriage, as her father gruffly summed up the problem. So she had been sent away for 5 years to a convent in Norway. She probably never would have been released if she hadn't come into an inheritance from a childless uncle in Eastern Götaland. Thus she became a woman to be married off, instead of languishing in a convent. So she knew when to stand and when to kneel, when to rattle off the paternosters and Ave Marias, which some of the bishops at the altar were intoning, and when to say her own prayers. Each time she had to say her own prayer, she prayed for her life. God had given her a son 3 years before. It had taken 2 days and nights to give birth to him. Twice the sun had gone up and gone down again while she was bathed in sweat, anguish, and pain. She knew she was going to die, and in the end all the good women helping her knew it too. They had sent for the priest in Forshem, and he had given her extreme unction and forgiveness for her sins. Never again, she had hoped, never again such pain, such terror of death, she now prayed. It was a selfish thing to ask, she knew that. It was common for women to die in childbed, and a human being is born in pain, but she had made the mistake of praying to the Holy Virgin to spare her, and she had tried to fulfill her marital duties in such a way that they would not lead to another childbed. Their son Eskil had lived, after all. The Holy Virgin had punished her, of course. New torments now awaited her, that was certain, and yet she prayed over and over to come through it easily. To lighten the lesser but irksome nuisance of standing and kneeling, standing up and then kneeling down again for hours on end, she'd had her thrall woman Sot baptized, so that she could come along into God's house. She had Sot stand next to her, and she leaned on the thrall when she had to get up and down. Sot's big black eyes were open wide like terrified horses' eyes, staring at everything she now observed. If she wasn't a real Christian before then, she ought to have become one by now. 3 man-lengths in front of Sigrid stood King Sverker and Queen Ulvild. The 2 of them, both weighed down by age, were having more and more trouble standing up and kneeling down without too much puffing. Yet it was for their sake, and not for God's, that Sigrid was in the cathedral. King Sverker held neither her Norwegian and Western Götaland kinsman, nor her husband's Norwegian and Folkung lineage in high esteem, but now, at his advanced age, the king had grown both suspicious and anxious about his life after this earthly one. Missing the king's great and blessed church dedication might have caused a misunderstanding. If a man or woman offended God in some way, that matter might be taken up with God himself. Sigrid considered it worse to be on the wrong side of the king. But during the 3rd hour, Sigrid's head began to swim, and she was having more and more trouble kneeling down and getting up again. The child inside her kicked and stirred all the more, as if in protest. She had the feeling that the pale yellow polished marble floor was undulating beneath her. She thought she saw it begin to crack, as if it might suddenly open up and swallow her whole. Then she did something quite outrageous. She walked resolutely, silk skirts rustling, over to a little empty bench off to the side, and sat down. Everyone saw it, the king too.